We believe the next step will be to distribute antennas everywhere. And we're already pushing antenna development into the size of a matchbox. But in our labs, we're also looking to create antennas so small and so flexible that we can integrate them with adhesive tape. We call them radio stripes. And they could actually provide truly ubiquitous connectivity in dense cities. And here you have a radio stripe. We believe this is going to revolutionize the future of antennas. And you can see I have kilometers in my pocket. We think this is going to be extraordinarily interesting for indoor coverage, but also in stadiums, factories and warehouses. As 5G now is becoming a commercial reality, we at Ericsson are well prepared. We have the capacity, we have the resources, and we have the supply chain geared up for a fast deployment and rollout of 5G. We have a complete and dynamic and flexible 5G portfolio, and our strategy continues to be to work with lead customers in lead markets to have lead solutions for them. And we do this where spectrum becomes available. So our top priority is always to work with the leading customers in the leading markets where spectrum is available. But that's what Ericsson is all about. We're focused on being technology leaders, helping our customers to move into the future. And we are where the market really matters. I believe we have never been at a more exciting time in our industry. We see a big technology change, a technology shift happening in front of our eyes, and we are well positioned to capture the benefits here. And together we are going to change the world. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Börje. I think we're ready to take questions. And if you put your hand up, a microphone will come to you. Please, if you could say your name and what publication or analyst house you're from, we'd appreciate it. Let's start here in the front.
Good morning to you, Vaciu, CNBC Africa and Talk Radio 702 Johannesburg. You mentioned with regards to your R&D and you've hired an additional 4,000 engineers. I've been to your impressive innovation center in Silicon Valley. How much is Ericsson planning to spend in the next year on R&D?
We have, over the last year, basically continued to ramp up. We think the current level is probably about right, so it's in the 35 to 38 billion kroner. So call it a what that becomes now, 16-17% of sales roughly. We believe that's the level where we can drive innovation and drive new product introductions into the market, and that's what we're committed to.
Right. Take the next one there.
Corinne Reicher at ZDNet. Why do you think North America and Asia are winning on 5G?
Different reasons. The first use case is really to cope with the growing data traffic. Data traffic started to grow earlier in those markets. And you can see that already today, that they are a little bit ahead of the rest of the world in data consumption. So that is one of the key reasons, probably the more North American reason. China has been very committed to the industrial internet very early on and seeing industrial applications. So both of those two regions have really pushed ahead to make sure that we get an early deployment, kind of recognizing that as soon as you build a network, you are going to get a lot of innovation. And those two regions are leading here. And I think we in Europe have been a little bit slower. But that's due to the more regulatory environment, general investment climate, etc.
I think we have one question over there.
Hi, it's Jeff Qualm from Nomura. For those of us who have been through a couple of the tech migrations in the past, they haven't proven to be as durable and investable themes as we might like. So I'm wondering, to what extent do you think that 5G, what differences does 5G bring versus the prior tech migrations? might be more durable and have a more durable benefit for Ericsson in the industry? Thank you.
I think there are a couple of reasons. One is the historic. When we have had generational shift, we have basically been building new networks. This time, we believe 5G is going to be built upon the 4G network. So it's in a way an evolution of the existing infrastructure. That's changing the dynamics, so it makes the value of what we call the installed base different. And that's what's going to be one benefit. The other, which I think is actually even bigger, is the revenue opportunity from completely new applications, which we didn't have before. So that we're talking about the industrial applications. We have done calculations saying that it can be more than basically $600 billion in extra revenues for the service provider. That's a 50 to 60% potential revenue increase. That is what's going to make this investable for the future. And that's different from last generation.
We'll go here in the front and then we're going to move over to the other side.
Yes, hello, Alex Duval from Goldman Sachs. Thank you for the question. You talked about industrial IoT. Can you talk a little bit about how you see the timeline for that, and what are the contingencies you think are required for that to become a reality? Thank you.
This will of course take time until it's fully penetrated. But as we said, we believe we are going to see cellular IoT connections passing the 4 billion mark in just a few years. And what we see is it's a big interest from enterprises actually today contacting us asking about connectivity. And it's the whole notion, what can I do when I start to connect the factory, when I start to understand the product flow within the factory and create the flexibility, for example, in robotics. And that is starting to change the notion what can be done. We should still not assume this is a 2020 event, but it's going to gain pace over the coming 3, 4, 5 years and providing a significant revenue potential, I would say, by 5 years. And the value, again, in automation, in a factory setting or logistics chain for that matter, is very substantial. So that's why they are talking to us, how do we solve that connectivity challenge?
Great. I think we'll go over to you, Ray.
Ray Lemaitre from Light Reading. It's very clear from this morning that you're not a fan of post-production testing processes. But you spent quite a lot of time talking about it, so do you feel that this is going to be imposed on the industry? Are you getting that sense that something is coming down the line on that?
There are many discussions ongoing of post-development testing, and we don't see it as a silver bullet, and we want to just be clear early on here that we think it runs the risk of slowing down the industry.
Hello, Börje from Media. I want to ask you about the narrowband IoT and LTE and the transition to 5G from those technologies. How do you see the adoption of these things? Because narrowband IoT is growing worldwide. It's mostly initially an European thing. And the second part is about, autonomous vehicles. You mentioned some testing going on. And how do you see 5G competing with Wi-Fi technologies like the SRC and others? Thank you.
If we look at narrowband IoT, I would say that's a very competitive solution for cellular IoT connections. So we are going to see that to be a very important technology for a long period of time. 5G is really needed when you need some special features. We're talking about the bigger bandwidth, lower latency, many more connection or connecting points, where you actually have problems with the LTE being congested. So the whole notion that 5G is needed for wide area cellular IoT is not really true. It will be needed in specific applications though, where you need the latency, for example. So then we're getting into, for example, factory automation, where if you are going to use edge compute to drive your robots, in the factory, you cannot accept latency. You can go and take a look at one simulation of a robot here where you simulate what happens when you put edge compute and 5G latency versus what you get when you put edge compute and 4G latency. And you will see the robot behaving very differently. So that is the whole notion that there will be certain applications that really benefit from 5G. Then Wi-Fi, and that's an eternal debate. And Wi-Fi is a very good near-field technology for certain applications. The problem you have is how you make sure you get reliable connectivity in Wi-Fi environment. So again, if you're going to put your robot, you cannot accept any interference. If you get any interference, you're going to lose connectivity and you're all of a sudden going to break down. So that's why when we talk to the enterprise customers, they are not interested in Wi-Fi connectivity for automating production. They'll use Wi-Fi connectivity for laptop, computers, etc. that's needed in production, but not in the line environment. So it's again going to be different applications.
Thank you. So we're going to start over there on the right. Gentleman there, then we're going to come to you, Elizabeth, and then move up here in the front.
Hi, it's David Mulholland from UBS. Just following on from the last question on enterprise, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your business model and how you're going after the kind of enterprise and the private 5G build that we might be seeing over the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, one of your competitors has been quite clear about going quite direct. So I'd love to know how you see the best way to address that.
We are working with our service provider customers. So you will see when we provide connectivity to enterprises, we do that together with our service providers. And that's the way we are going to go to market. And the reason for that is we believe it's never a good idea to compete with your own customers. It's much better to find win-win solutions in addressing this market segment, and that's what we're doing.
Pandey, JP Morgan. Just one question on the debates about security in Europe are going to continue. But if there is going to be a change in the networks in Europe, is there going to have to be a very large number of swaps in the networks, which will essentially delay the implementation of 5G? And is Ericsson's entry into the open radio standard one of the reasons? That is one of the reasons why you entered that standard.
It's a very hypothetical question, right? It's we must just let the governments decide what to do here. So we're not going to comment on that. What we see today is really more uncertainty in our customers. So we're not seeing, any motion in that direction. But what we have done is we're preparing our supply chain to deliver 5G products and 4G products at a high pace, and that's, we believe that's going to happen no matter what happens on geopolitics. So it's a big technology cycle in front of us, and we're gearing up for that. Of course, joining Open RAN is about what is going to happen to the future architecture of networks. And we're talking about networks, 5 years out, 3 to 5 years out. How will that architecture look like? And O-RAN is clearly one interesting way that it could look like, but if there are other initiatives ongoing. But we said it's better to be part of these initiatives and fully understand them.
So I think we have time for 3-4 more questions. We're going to start here in the front, then we're going to move over there. Then I believe Christopher behind you.
Hi, good morning. Jörgen Wetterberg from Nordea. I have a question on the dynamic spectrum sharing. So first of all, when are we going to see that in real networks, and is this a unique feature for Ericsson? Number two, how do you see that changing the demand for spectrum in upcoming millimeter wave auctions and the allocation policies from operators in buying new spectrum versus allocating capex to build 5G on existing spectrum? Thank you.
It will be coming towards the end of the year. It varies a little bit by band, etc. And it is a unique feature. We have the benefit here of having base bands that can carry 5G traffic from already 2015, 2016. And that's one of the benefits that allows us to do exactly this. In reality, I think the whole spectrum situation, all operators will need to have a kind of cake of spectrum. They need to have low band for coverage, they will need to have mid band for some sort of coverage and capacity, and you will need high bands for the ultra high capacity. So all operators will need all of those bands, and we believe all of the bands will ultimately go 5G. Then it kind of takes a little bit longer time depending on the band, but it's ultimately going to go there. But what our spectrum sharing allows you to do is to use an existing band that you can go very fast into launching 5G services. For example, in low band, so you get all of a sudden very good coverage with 5G services. For example, for IoT applications again. That's where we think the unique feature is more valuable. It's unique for Ericsson.
Then we'll go up here in the front.
こち杉沼映像新聞 Visual Communication Journal Tokyo Japan. And after the big glitch last year, our government started thinking, it is reported our government started thinking to regulate manufacturers instead of operators. So do you have any comment on this regulation idea?
More allocating spectrum to industrial companies? No.
The glitch on the switch last December. Yeah, after that, government started thinking to regulate manufacturers, not the operators. So how the quality of the products are ensured like that. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, no, I don't have a view on that actually.
I'm Roxana from Mobile Communications Ladies in Romania. I remember a few years ago the European Commission launched a public-private initiative on 5G. What happened to that initiative? And since last year, since you stated that Europe is losing in front of US and Asia on 5G, what was the evolution? How is the gap now?
I actually don't know of that. You may know that better, Ola. I'm not sure. So we have no idea what happened. Is kind of, I guess, is the answer. If you look today, so the US already has commercial networks up and running on 5G, so they are clearly ahead. We see a very intense situation or intense interest in Northeast Asia, so there we see commercial traffic coming end of this year, I would say, second part of this year. It varies a bit by country, but as a general phenomenon, it's during this year. If you look in Europe, the spectrum situation is not fully resolved. It's less than half of all countries have actually had auctions for 5G spectrum. So even if technology would be available, etc., it's just not possible to build out. You can't launch commercial service. So it's a question in Europe that we need to make a decision on how to allocate spectrum faster, probably not look at so high spectrum fees as we have been. We should look at what are the benefits for the economy instead of coverage or rolling out fast. So there are a number of things that need to change. And I would say lastly, one of the most important things is actually site permitting and the process around getting permits to build a site. That's very time consuming in large parts of Europe. So we have a number of structural inhibitors to catching up towards Northeast Asia as well as the US.
Thank you. We'll come here in the front.
Yes, good morning. Stefan Slowinski from Exane BNP Paribas. 2018 saw an acceleration in 4G network modernization and initial 5G network rollouts with a return to growth for the industry. Do you see that momentum continuing into 2019, or will this be more of a transition year negatively impacted by staggered rollouts? And if you do see it continuing, which countries do you see that happening in? Thank you.
If we look, what's driving the need to modernize the networks? It's the growth in data traffic. So as data traffic has grown by call it doubling every 18 to 24 months. The operators need to manage that traffic without getting costs spiraling out of control. And if you go back a few years, when we had the same data growth, networks weren't really loaded, so it didn't really impact service as much. What we've seen over the last year is that in many areas, sites are getting congested, traffic quality is starting to deteriorate, and the operator actually needs to invest in capacity. So I do see a period where it's not a transition period, it's much rather that growth pattern will most likely continue for a period. Then we can debate, how long and how is it exactly going to look like. But we see the interest to be growing from our operator customer because they need to manage this. Geographically, it's relatively across the board. Data traffic, it may well be that data traffic actually grows a little bit slower in Europe. I guess because we have less data networks here. So you see data traffic grow very fast in Northern Europe, India, China, the US, Latin America. So pretty much across the board. So it's not. Then different regions are going to be earlier. So we had a very strong North American business, for example, last year. They were a little bit earlier, but we see this growth pattern happening across the board.
And our final question this morning.
I'm Levine Kamen from Daily News Egypt. I'm just asking about the Middle East. You did not mention it in your presentation, the ability of the country, especially Egypt, for applying the 5G.
The reality is Middle East is moving relatively fast into 5G, and we have many discussions ongoing there. So what we see is that we'll be an early adopter as well, and we will see that it's actually a technology interest that's very strong in many of the countries. Then specifically Egypt may be a little bit later, but there are other countries that are clearly going to be much earlier.
Right, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us.